Hey everybody, this week's video is again through Edpuzzle. So like last week it was just the video. This week it's more interactive and there's going to be some questions for you to answer along the way. So make sure that when you signed up, you signed in with your real actual name so I can tell who did and did not do it. And just be thoughtful and answer the questions thoughtfully and you're going to be fine. Don't worry about like right and wrong answers as much as just making sure that you're paying attention and following along. So this week's content is all about transfer agreements and sort of the red tape and the bureaucracy involved and making sure you dot all your I's and cross all your T's as you prepare to complete a degree at one institution and then transfer that associate's degree to another institution. It can be a tricky process to navigate, and there's going to be a lot of new terminology. And again, as I've mentioned before, anytime you're dealing with higher ed, they want to use as convoluted and confusing language as possible. They want it to sound highfalutin. They want the language itself to infer this sense of intellectual adeptness, I guess. I don't know. I'm trying to use fancy words because I can't help myself because I work in higher ed. So anyway, the point is, we got to kind of cut through all of that language and sort of figure out what exactly is going on when we start looking at how the transfer process is going to work. So let's get started. So our key terms that you see down here: comprehensive articulation agreement, transfer equivalencies, and universal general education transfer component classes. Again, that last one is what we called UGETC last week, and we introduced that video. We're going to talk more about it now. And then Comprehensive Articulation Agreement, or the CAA, we will also talk about. Again, the terminology there is intentionally confusing, I think. All right, but first off, let's review from what we talked about last week that a bachelor's degree requires a well-rounded education, right? So it means that even if you're majoring in one thing, you're going to have to take classes from different things, from a variety of subjects. So even if you're a chemistry major, you still might have to take a philosophy class or a music class. Even if you're a psychology major, you might have to take a biology class or a chemistry class. That's the nature of being in a bachelor's degree program, a 4-year degree program, right? And so they separate that into two. That's the basic separation. That's the basic way they organize a bachelor's degree. The lower division, or the general education requirements, which is what the Associate of Arts or the Associate of Science is designed to mirror. And then you've got your major program requirements. So your lower division or general education requirements are where they want you to get that well-rounded part. They want you to have that little bit of knowledge from all sorts of different areas. And then in your last 2 years worth of classes are where you're really going to become an expert in one particular area, where you're going to get into you're going to be taking almost nothing but classes from your specific major, and you're really developing that expertise in one particular discipline. So these are two of our key transfer documents: the Associate in Arts and the Associate in Science. Or this is really just how you're going to complete the first 2 years. The general education requirements are what we call the lower division requirements in order to complete a 4-year degree. So this is like the first half of a 4-year degree, or what you can complete at the community college level. So you can see it's broken down by category, and it's a little bit different between the Associate in Arts and the Associate in Science, just in the number of classes you have to take from each category, and even which classes will count toward the categories. You can see that between the Associate in Arts and the Associate in Science, the math courses are different, right? The same math courses that may count for your Associate in Arts might not count for the Associate in Science. Same with the natural science requirement. The humanities and social sciences and English composition, those classifications stay about the same, or the exact same. Just the number of classes are different, but the classes themselves don't switch between AA and AS. So if you remember last week, we broke this down by category, right? So you've got your English comps, your humanities and fine arts, the social and behavioral sciences, the math and the natural sciences, and then we talked about the bottom half of your classes, or maybe technically the second year worth of classes, but then there's a lot of back and forth between the two. But this bottom half, the additional general education hours and the other required hours, are going to depend heavily on what you want your major to be. So even though you're not going to be taking your upper level classes in your specific discipline, they want to make sure you have all the basics down, but so you can, once you transfer, you can start taking those 300 and 400 level upper level classes in your major, and that you're well prepared to do well in those classes. So we got to think about our major all along the way. But again, this is just a review from last week. We broke this down by category, and then we talked about the top half of it. Those are special classes. That's what we call the core general education requirements. So the whole list of the general education requirements, but the top half, the classes that correspond to these specific categories, are your core general education requirements, and the classes that fulfill those core requirements are what we call UGETC. That's the Universal General Education Transfer Component classes. That's a mouthful. We just call them UGETC, and it works like, if you follow me on this, you get C, right? You get C, you get credit. It doesn't matter which college you're transferring to or which program you're transferring to, you can get credit for the classes, and these classes will satisfy certain basic requirements at every school in the UNC system and others, and most other schools. Like every school has an intro to sociology class and a general psychology class and an American history class and a world history class. So you just know that these classes are ubiquitous. They're offered at every school, and they are guaranteed to transfer to schools with whom the North Carolina Community College System has agreements, but they're probably going to transfer no matter what school you go to. So I just mentioned something about agreements between the community college system and the university system, or between specific colleges. There is one agreement that governs the transfer process between our community college system and our UNC system. And so before we get into the nuts and bolts of that, which we are about to do, I think it's good to just kind of review and remember what the UNC system is and which schools are part of that system. So here they are for you to peruse. Now we can talk about why that matters. All of the UNC system schools are public universities. All of the public universities in North Carolina are part of the UNC system. If they're not part of the UNC system and they're a four-year institution, that means they're a private school. So let's look at the difference between public and private, and I think this is a little bit of a review. The key difference is that public schools receive state funds and private schools don't. And that's it. That is by definition, that is the only difference. But there are some other things that happen because of that that make a difference, right? Public schools have a lower tuition or no tuition if you're dealing with pre-secondary level or secondary and before, up to high school, right? Public school up through high school comes at no additional cost, but private schools do have a tuition even at the elementary, middle, and high school level. When we get to the university level or the college level, your public schools do have a tuition, but it's going to be a lower initial price tag anyway than your private schools. Now, I have to say with this caveat that some of our smaller private schools in our area, like Wesleyan and Chowan and Barton, they can become very affordable. Like when you first do the research and you see the initial real high price tag, it could be really off-putting. But just know that especially these smaller regional private colleges, that price is going to come down for everybody. Practically nobody pays that full tuition price. And very often these smaller private colleges can be very affordable, even more affordable than some of our public institutions. I just have to put that out there. But the other key difference about public and private schools is that because public schools receive their funds from the state can impose certain rules that they have to follow. Private schools are under no obligation from the state to do anything. They have to remain accredited. But other than that, they can do whatever they want. And so one of the rules that the state does impose is the Comprehensive Articulation Agreement, and that is the way community college transfer processes work, right? There is a uniform way that UNC system schools work with community college credits, and that is all laid out in something called the Comprehensive Articulation Agreement. Now, this is some information, and again, this PowerPoint is posted to Blackboard right above where the video is, so you can download and have this slide as a reference tool, because there's a lot of words on there. But the key thing that I want us to focus on is that this agreement identifies which classes are guaranteed to transfer and which general education requirements each class will fulfill at any UNC system school. With the caveat that you got to maintain a 2.0 GPA and earn a C or better in all the classes. So if you get we don't do minuses, but if you get a D in one of these classes, all bets are off. They're not going to transfer. It also makes some guarantees for you if you finish your Associate of Arts or your Associate of Science, and that's worth mentioning. That's worth talking about for just a minute. As long as you finish an AA or an AS at a North Carolina community college, then you are guaranteed admission to at least one UNC system school. Not necessarily your top choice, not all of them, but at least one UNC system school will accept you and will admit you as a junior with all of your general education or lower division requirements fulfilled. So as long as you finish your AA or your AS, you are guaranteed admission into the UNC system as a junior, taking upper level classes, ready to hone that expertise in your one chosen discipline. So that's the CAA, or the Comprehensive Articulation Agreement. And that is, again, between all of our community colleges and our UNC system schools. Those are all of our public institutions of higher education in North Carolina. Again, they all get their funding from the state, so the state can impose rules on all of them. And this is one of those key rules that the state imposes on all of our public institutions. They dictate that the community college system and the university system have to work together in very specific and prescribed ways. Now, some private colleges also will work with your community college transfer credits in much the same way that the public colleges will. But they don't have to. They're under no obligation to. But a lot of our private colleges in North Carolina, in fact, most of our private colleges in North Carolina, will make you basically the same guarantees as the UNC system schools will. But again, they're just not obligated to. But if a private institution wishes to work with community college transfer credits in the same way that the public schools do, they join something called the ICAA. And that is substantively, it's the same agreement. It's just between private schools who opt in. So that's the key difference between the CAA and the ICAA. The CAA is an agreement between all the UNC system schools and all of the North Carolina community colleges. And so it's one big agreement for all of those schools. The ICAA is an agreement between the North Carolina community college system and each one of these schools individually. They choose to opt in and work with your community college credits and make you some guarantees. Now, this is not to say that the schools that aren't on this list, like you're going to notice some of the more prestigious private colleges in our state aren't on this list. Duke's not on the list. Wake Forest isn't on the list. Davidson is not on the list. These schools may work with your community college credits, but they're going to look at them more on a case-by-case basis. They make you no guarantees. All of these colleges on this list say that as long as you get the credit at a North Carolina community college, that credit will transfer and meaningfully. I mean, it'll transfer and it'll count towards something. So those are the schools on the list. And again, it's worth kind of mulling over and taking some time to review and see which of these schools show up, which of these schools you've heard of, which of these schools might have some programs that you're interested in. All right, let's look at this slide one more time. And this is like the fourth time in 2 weeks, maybe the fifth time in 2 weeks that we've looked at this slide and we've looked at this document and this breakdown. It should let you know that it's pretty important, right? This is an important thing to understand. If you have any questions about anything that's on this document, reach out and let me know, because it's in a document that we're going to be working with extensively in the coming weeks. So again, we'll break it down by category, the number of classes that you have to take in each category. But what I really want to review right now is this concept of UGETC. We've tossed it around a little bit, but let's really get into what we mean by universal general education transfer components. And again, that just means that they are classes that are going to fulfill these core general education requirements. All right? Remember that these categories are special. Now, there are other classes in the social and behavioral sciences that are not UGETC courses, which means they will not fulfill this social and behavioral sciences core requirement. So just remember, the UGETC classes are very special, right? And UGETC stands for Universal General Education Transfer Component, and it just means that the equivalency is guaranteed and it's uniform across all institutions of higher learning, ideally. And again, this is all review stuff. This is all stuff that's going to sound pretty familiar from what we've talked about, but I want you to have it there in writing for you to review at any time. And this is actually old. I need to update this picture. This is the list of courses that's on the third page of the document we looked at last week, right? We used this document to fill out the last part of our Understanding College Courses activity, if you remember. So if you look through these, there's going to be a little difference between the AS and the AA, and you can see that, right? You can see where some of these math courses, like Math 171, count for the AA and the AS. Meanwhile, Math 152 would only fulfill a UGETC requirement or a core general education requirement for math for the Associate of Arts. Again, I don't know why the Associate of Science people have something against statistics. Math 152 is a statistics class, but the Associate of Science people, they don't need you to have that, at least not for your math requirement. So anyway, this list is just a good, helpful tool to look at, right? So pretty much every week from here on out, I will post a link to this 3-page document. The first one is the semester by semester breakdown, which y'all don't really need to worry about because everybody's at a different place and going at a different pace. But the second 2 documents, which include the list that you can fill out and this comprehensive list that shows you all the classes that can transfer and which category they might go into, really important pages for you to have handy. So again, I'll have a link to this document in pretty much every week for the rest of the semester. All right, and that's what we have for the week. So remember your key vocabulary terms that you're going to want to remember going forward. You want to know what UGETC is. When you see that UGETC, you don't necessarily need to remember the full acronym and what all the letters stand for, but you just need to know that when you see a class has a UGETC designation, that means it's a class that's going to fulfill one of your core general education requirements. Again, just remember, not every class that's a social science fulfills the social science core requirements. Just some very special ones do, and those special classes are called UGETC classes. Then remember, the CAA is the Comprehensive Articulation Agreement. That's between the community colleges and the UNC system. And then we also have the ICAA between the community colleges and private schools who opt in, who choose to participate and to work with your community college transfer credits in the same way that the UNC system does. So CAA, ICAA, know the difference. Know the difference between the requirements for the AA and the AS, the number of classes you have to take from each of those core requirements. And remember in terms from last week, credit hours. That's important. Remember that if you look at those lists, you'll see that the total number of credit hours you need for an associate's degree is 60 or 61 credit hours. And the total number of hours you would need for a bachelor's degree is 120 credit hours or more. Most people are going to end up with a little bit more than 120 credit hours. You got to be really on your P's and Q's to make, every class count exactly the way it should. But this class is going to help you, hopefully help you do that. All right. So that's what I've got. So our assignment this week is just to do some research on some of these ICAA schools. So you'll see a list down below here of all of the ICAA schools. Those are the private colleges that agree to work with your transfer credits in the same way that the UNC system does. And I want you guys to find out a little bit of information on those. So read the description really carefully. I don't know what you're going to find on all of these. I've done this for a couple of years, so I've seen a bunch. But I don't have students that are interested in all of these schools. You may be the first one that is interested in Salem College. I don't think I've ever had anybody look up Salem College in Winston-Salem. But it's worth exploring. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe it is. But anyway, point is, do some Googling, do some digging around, see what you can find about transfer documents that they provide online that you could use to help inform your decision-making as you're navigating the rest of your community college experience. I don't know what you're going to find. So you're going to post some links. You're going to tell me a little bit about what you did find or what you couldn't find. And that's going to be it. And next week, we're going to get more into this. We're going to have another little quiz and interactive activity that's going to help prepare us for a midterm that we're going to have in just a couple more weeks, where, again, I just got to make sure that we're on the same page, because we're going to be using this terminology of credit hours and public versus private colleges and UGETSI and CAA. We're going to be using these terms so much and just throwing them around all willy-nilly all the rest of the semester that I got to make sure that we're on the same page, that you know what I mean when I'm using these terms. So we got to have a brief little midterm to make sure that we've got that vocabulary down, and then we will move on to really doing some work to make your individual college plan. All right, that's what I got. Thanks, everybody. I will see you soon. Let me know if you have questions.